I work obviously independently, but I am on the viticultural, you wouldn't believe this, technical committee of IAgrE. You might worry about that, seeing that I can't get the screen to work. And we're looking at all aspects of new technology in viticulture. That's from chemicals, that's fungicides, herbicides, insecticides, and registration. IAgrE, as if you don't appreciate it, is a overall association who look after all the vineyards in the UK, of which you had to be a member, of course. Not every vineyard is a member, but we're trying to get most vineyards to be members. And we are looking after their the availability of new products. We're looking at new registrations for new products, always investigating those. It's always quite difficult because to get trial work on new agrochemicals is very expensive, and B, takes a long time. We do tend to share a lot of this information with horticulture and top and soft fruit, because we share some common products, and we can use their registrations to parallel with our vines in many cases. We can't do it in every case, but that does allow us to have access to new chemicals and new active ingredients that otherwise would cost us an absolute fortune to get re-registered. Right, okay, introduction then. With the continued increase in plantings of vines in the UK, coupled with the reducing availability of an experienced vineyard labour force, we are facing an increasing challenge to manage our vineyards. Thus, we must explore and embrace the benefits of new forms of mechanical, electrical, and robotic technology, say, to innovate is to survive. Right, just going through the present situation, which we need to understand. To understand the need for mechanization in our vineyards, we need to accept what is happening. Now, this year, we're looking at a total area of around 4,000 hectares, with some 2 million new vines planting for this year. When I started 22 years ago, we had just under 1,000 hectares. So we can see how we've expanded, and the last 10 years has been a massive increase. So we are now quite a significant industry, which does help us when we're looking at new forms of active ingredients. Now, last year we experienced a significant drop in the availability of both experienced and casual labour. This is one of the big problems that we are facing, not on our own. The top and soft fruit are facing the same problems, but this is significantly affecting us and the availability and the ability to manage these increasing hectareages of vineyards. Also, the move to a more sustainable way to produce our grapes. This is sustainability, carbon capture, carbon loss. This is all part of it now. Much more interest in that, rightly so. Continued resistance to use of herbicides, pesticides, insecticides. Also, this is something that we must accept. I don't want to spray horrible chemicals over anything. Now, the other environmental pressure is traceability requirements. Now, supermarkets and other outlets are much more requiring of us to show full traceability of whatever we're doing, thus forcing the removal of agrochemicals, which I said that's not a bad thing, but we still have to produce a crop. New registrations are more expensive and time consuming. I mentioned that before. Chemical residues are not acceptable and can be more easily detected. Modern technology now, as you know in your fields, we have the ability to find virtually anything we want to find. I use a lot of labs. I use Landcrop, I use Ferra, and they've all said, look, we can find everything, we can find anything. Now it's up to you whether it is relevant or not. So, practical issues that facing mechanization. We're working with a row crop. row widths between 1.8 to 2.5 meters. So there we have our first potential problem. Trellising heights 2 to 2.5 meters high. So again, we have a problem or potential problem. Trellising systems, single, double cane, Scott Henry, those are different ways of growing grapes, and therefore they will set us certain challenges on building machines that will go over the vine to allow optimum spraying. Thus, differing spray patterns are required. So you have the other thing we have, which is not entirely just our problem. It's the continent have the same. We have vertical, quite a lot of vertical, quite steep slopes. The other ones we have are side slopes, which are more problematic when we're trying to use robotics. So those are situations that we are faced with. Climate change. Now, this is important for our vines. We're experiencing extreme weather events, as we had particularly last year. More frequent and later frost. This seems becoming a trend, which of course cause us, or can cause us, devastating effects. Localized high rainfall, high winds, extended adverse weather patterns, classic of last year. All the above create stress situations for the vines, and like vines do not like stress. Nobody likes stress. We don't like stress. If you stress a vine, it would take probably 1 to 2 years to return. Right, how then can technology help us? Predicting upcoming events and situations. We have the technology. We can look by studying weather patterns. We can obviously, or many times, we can come to a situation where we can predict that there may be a classic situation or weather pattern for powdery and downy mildew particularly. Herbicide, fungicide, insecticide applications. These are what we have to look to from our new machines. Disease prediction, mentioned before. This is an important factor, and we can help this to a great extent. Disease identification. This again can be done. Yield monitoring and predictions. Again, very important when you're actually predicting your harvest and your potential. And quality monitoring. So these are things that we can look for technology to help us. Existing options. Right, now we have a range of machines that are available now. The one that has caught the imagination quite a lot, but started about 3 or 4 years ago, the electrostatic machines. These are obviously electrically, so what they create is electrically charged droplets, which naturally go straight to Earth. So theoretically, they should be much more effective because they are automatically going straight to Earth. Now, but it's not quite as straightforward as that because it would depend a lot on the canopy and how dense that canopy is. So but it will increase the efficiency and potentially reduce the application rates, both chemical and water. Again, this is a big cost saving. Halfway house, it still requires a tractor and a driver. So that's the sort of modern, that was the sort of the first new technology that we were looking at. But if you look at the bottom picture, which shows the spray pattern, we are still blasting out a massive amount of liquid mixed with chemicals, which can obviously get into the air. So that is a big factor that we're looking at, trying to reduce chemical spray over neighboring crops. Robotics. Now, these must be able to navigate through vineyards whilst applying product. Now, the one that we got below, which is on trial, which looks interesting. The vineyard is not what I would say is one of the better vineyards I've seen. Hey ho, but that's my agronomical comment on that. Should have the ability to apply both fungicides, herbicides, and insecticides. It's no good having a robot if we can't do all what is required, because we're trying to reduce the number of passes, reduce labor force. So we need to maximize applications from our robots. Number of operations in the States and the continent. We've got some of these these machines out on trial. America have got 1 or 2 already working. Now, the benefit of a base product or base machine is to have bolt-on additional services. So you can get a basically toolbar, robotic toolbar, and we can add things onto it, which we'll go through. The other one, of course, drones. Everybody knows about drones. Drones, great fun to play with, but they do have a very good use in vineyards and in other situations as well. With the use of high intensity photography, you can pick up early indication of disease and also pick up nutrient deficiency through coloration indications. Stress areas and vines can be identified and thus investigated. Knowledge is power, as we say. So the more you can pick up stress situations, the more you can pick up potential disease, early indication of disease, the better. And the more we can then manage our crops, our vines. Now, what to me is the most interesting aspect is the use of UV technology. Now, it's not new. UV technology has been used before, but we haven't used it particularly in viticulture. There is obviously significant cost attached to this, but what it allows us to do is very early disease identification, and we can use it to control and eliminate disease. The use of robots fitted with UV lights can roam the vineyard during the night, can be effective in killing powdery mildew, downy mildew, and summer insect pests. We know with powdery mildew, we've got a lot of trial results which prove that. Downy mildew, not quite so much trial result, but they definitely do allow us to control it. Cornell Department in America, Plant Pathology in Oregon, they've been doing a lot of work on this. Now, I'm not an expert on UV technology at all, but what I have found is that the band of light that is used is UV-C. Now, you probably know more about it than I do, but that's what sort of fascinated me, that, you start researching something and you come up with very interesting things. Now, the benefit of that is the financial benefits are very significant. Again, if we're using robotic systems with UV technology, we are taking a lot of the cost of physical people involved. So we can help to reduce our costs. So that's a UV robot, an interesting looking thing. But this is one that they use them at night because you get better results from UV light during the night, so you haven't got any background. Again, they've been using these in America very successfully. The other thing we can use it, obviously, is for weed control. Now, the one in the picture is not, I suggest, for a vineyard, too big, but it was done to actually show how with lasers you can actually use it for weed control. System can be, again, a bolt-on option on robots. So again, increasing the benefit of investment in technology. What it needs to be is a lot narrower, but that can be done. It's purely a mechanical thing. So my challenge to the industry. With the ever-increasing challenges of producing grapes of high quality, disease-free, and of a profitable yield, with the constraints facing us, we must embrace these new technologies. The continued expansion of the viticulture industry will depend on the continued research and development of the use of robotics. As I said, to start to innovate, to survive. Thank you. Now, I know a whistle-stop tour through that, but hopefully it gives you a bit of an idea of what the industry is looking for from new technology, whatever it might be. So thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, John, for that. Might even, if you unmute yourself, you can actually clap, John, if you wish. We've got just one question at the moment. Do be thinking of other questions and put them on the chat. On the chat. Question from Tim Reynolds: does UVC impact pollinators?
It does affect, well, theoretically, it does control some insects. Now, the some insects was not specific, so the chances are, yes, it could, but basically, vines are self-pollinating, so we're not too worried about, well, we are obviously worried about killing pollinator insects. We don't do that, but we don't actually need them to pollinate the vines. They are self-pollinating, so it's not so much of a problem. The benefit of it is that it does appear to control light brown apple moth at an early stage, which can be devastating in vineyards, and spotted winged Drosophila, which is the other moth. Limited effects on the spotted wing, but quite good control on the light brown apple moth.
Thank you, John. A number of the technologies you're talking about don't involve chemicals, and I'm just wondering how much pressure there is on the like the supermarkets and so on the growers towards organic production.
That is ongoing. I mean, I've got a number of organic and a number of biodynamic vineyards that I look after. I have a lot more now moving towards a more organic way of producing crops, producing grapes. My challenge, well, not my challenge, what I try to do is to use as little chemical intervention as possible, whilst also having to obviously have a certain amount of insurance against disease. But the more accurate we can get in predicting disease, early disease prediction is the key. Now, normally we've been using obviously visual, by you and me wandering around the vineyard, picking up early indications. But by the time we've seen it, I suggest that the robotics can pick it up earlier than we can. Now, the earlier we can pick it up, the earlier we can put in controls, which may not be chemical. They can be more natural products. I hesitate to say salve is a natural product, but it is still classed as a natural product, and you know, cleared by soil association and the meter. But it does come down to early prediction is the key, and if we can use technology to allow us to get that early indication, we can save significant amounts of money. With all these new spray technologies, the more we can reduce our chemical input, the better for everybody, and obviously the more we are satisfying the public's need for less chemical residues, which is got to be good news.
Thank you. Yes, anybody else got any questions they want to put up?
Can I actually ask a question? Is there anything that's sort of peculiar to UK grape growing compared with, you know, much bigger players on the continent and that? And you mentioned frosts. I mean, I guess we probably have, well, I don't know if we have more frosts than they do on the continent, being that we've got a maritime climate. I don't know if there's, you know, is there anything peculiar to the UK that's where we can't just piggyback on what they're doing on the continent or in the States?
Well, we do piggyback a lot on what's going on in the States and on the continent. The difficulty we have is our climate, which is at best unpredictable. The frost situation appears to be getting more consistent. I mean, when I first started, we only get a frost problem every sort of 3 or 4 years. But if we go on the last 4 or 5 years, we've had significant frost events. The dangerous frost events are the late frosts, when we've always got bud burst. So we've got maybe 1 or 2 leaves out. You get a frost at that point, and it just takes the leaves out completely, just blackens them, they've gone. You will get, each bud, you will get a secondary bud coming out, but some of those will not be 100% fruitful, so we will lose a percentage of that. So frost is becoming, when I'm looking at new, when I'm talking to new vineyards, new potential vineyards, that is one of the things that we talk about. The first thing we do is to check the site, because obviously you don't want to plant vines in what we call a frost hollow. So site selection is the key, but looking at or considering what you may want to put in for your frost protection. Now we have, there are various formulations we can spray on the vines to reduce the severity of the frost. It won't stop the frost completely. The only one that was 100% is actually misting, which is quite expensive to put up a whole system. But that's 100% effective. So frost is a problem. Our climate, somebody saw, a French grower said to me, if you can grow grapes in England, you can grow them anywhere in the world. That's a bit naughty, but that's sort of almost a typical French comment. However, the French are planting over here, I hasten to add. But at the moment, we're going through really peculiar climatic conditions. We've got these really strange systems where you get either a very early spring, a full spring, then it all goes cold, and then you get a late frost, or then we get a late bud burst, and then it rains for the next 3 weeks. So it is. I'm not sort of excusing our viticulture, but we do have to manage with some rather bizarre climatic conditions. So again, the more efficient we can get at yield predictions, applying what we are considering to apply, whether it's organic or conventional, the more we can cover our crops and limit the disease potential.
Okay, thank you, John. I think Alan, did you have a question?
Yep. Yeah. Okay, John. Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm on my mobile, so I wasn't sure. Yeah, just building on that last question, really, and thinking about the position in Britain. Robots aren't exactly going to be cheap, certainly not until they become widely available. What is the viability at average size of British vineyards? What size would be cost effective? Maybe that put the question that way.
Yeah, well, that's a question that is often asked and very difficult to answer. Really, depends what you want out of your vineyard. A lot of vineyards, there are, I would suggest, very few vineyards in the UK which support 100% the owners. That there are exceptions. There's some very big vineyards which are totally commercial, and they are self-funding, and they're the only ones that can really afford expensive robotics. But there are, even if you're using a drone, drone's quite cheap, and that can be very cost effective. I know people, oh, it's a nice big boy's toy, but it's not. It can be used very, very efficiently. As we go on further, and the electrostatic sprayer, that is very similar to the price of a conventional sprayer. It's slightly more expensive, but again, you've got the option and the ability to reduce the amount of chemicals you're applying to the crop. So that can be quite cost effective, and that can be cost effective on a vineyard from, say, from around sort of 2 or 3 hectares, because that's the sort of investment you'll put in for a sprayer anyway. So that can be quite cost effective, but it's only a halfway house. You're still using a tractor and a driver. And what I'm trying to do, what we have to do as industry, is trying to reduce our reliance on staff, because we just can't get them, and it's getting worse. So that's and I'm afraid what's going to happen with, and it happens in every industry that goes through an expansion, a massive expansion situation, you will get the smaller ones are going to find it hard to survive. But they may well stay in production, but they may well be taken under the wing of a bigger grower as a contract grower, which happens, and that's fine. And then obviously the bigger contract, the main vineyards can then afford investing in more expensive machinery. But the big problem that I can see going on, and it worries me with the amount of, well, it concerns me with the amount of new plantings going in, is that we have got this terrible situation where we have a depleting labour force, and we come to serious, when it comes to harvest, we struggled last year, and just talking to all my contractors, they are not looking forward to harvest this year because they know they're going to be struggling. Now we do have mechanical harvesters, but again, and most of those contract. They're not owned separate. Well, there's one vineyard that has one himself, but again, that is really only cost effective on a big vineyard that is reasonably flat and level. Harvesters don't like going up hills and side banks, so there's a limit to what we can do there.
Just as a rider to that, you gave at the beginning the total area in the UK under viticulture, but you didn't give any indication of what the range of sizes of holdings are.
Well, the range of sizes goes from a little back garden with 50 vines in, up to our biggest ones, which are 50. What's the biggest one? Probably about 90 hectares. But the majority are I would say within the sort of 2 to 10 hectares. But the big new plantings tend to be quite big. To me, the good news is that the people that are coming in with the big plantings are coming in with city money. Now, to me, that means that they are looking long term. They won't put money in unless they see a long-term investment. And they are putting big plantings in, 20, 30 hectares at a hit, which is significant. It's a significant amount of money for investment. But then you do have a size that you can then invest in machinery to cope with it, which is the only way you can do it.
So it's only the larger holdings that could consider robotics in any way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do many vineyards have drones and use them?
There are increasing number. People have asked me, why don't you have one, John? Then you can come and do my, drone my vines. But I haven't got time for that. Be great fun. Be good excuse me to buy a drone. Yeah, I mean we've got a few that do have them. Do they have automatic recognition of disease or stress or whatever, or is it just people visually looking at the pictures? Well, a lot of it's visual looking at pictures, yes, but people like me can look at those pictures and then we can extrapolate from those pictures if there are significant problems, and it's quite good in picking up areas that are of concern, which means then you can go and pinpoint them and actually physically go and walk around, have a look, see what's the matter, take some soil samples, look at ground preparations, all this. So that they do have a use. I think I would like them being used more. I mean they're not expensive, and the new cameras we got on them now are so good. You can pick out a lot of potential problems, and again, to me, early detection is the key, and it will save you money.
Yes, thank you.
I'm trying to sell some.
Sorry, Alan, have you got a hand? You got a hand up on your screen.
Yeah, please. Ask a question wearing my Douglas Bomford Trust hat, if I may. For John's benefit, the trust, we fund research, PhD students, some MScs and so on in agriculture engineering, but I can't recall any projects coming our way in relation to viticulture. I wondered, are there any universities in this country or ag colleges or whatever that actually teach viticulture and the basics?
There's only one, there's no college as such. The only place we have is Plumpton College down in Sussex. That is the only viticultural faculty there is. We're desperately, as IAgrE, we're desperately trying to get other universities, campuses to do some work, but we haven't been successful. The Royal.
I was going to say, I was thinking there with Lincoln, for example, with a lot of the work that's going on linked up with other countries, but on harvesting produce, and I, there's potential there, but I hadn't heard of anybody.
I mean, we're obviously very keen to talk to anybody, and that's one of our that's what we're trying to do within our committee, trying to talk to other universities, faculties, to try and get them to look at if they can talk to us, and we can maybe steer them into projects that might fit into their way of working. But there are, there is another one actually apart from Plumpton. There's East Malling they do some research for us. They've got some trial sites there which are funded by the industry, some of the big suppliers. So they're doing some work. But no, we just don't have enough people, or we don't have enough universities that will do courses on viticulture, which is very worrying, because Plumpton are doing a fantastic job, but they can't do everything, and Plumpton's a long way from, Yorkshire.
Yeah. Well,
and
at least, I was going to say, Professor Simon Pearson up at Lincoln, he might be your man. At least they're a lot closer.
Well, lovely. Well, if you can drop me a name, that would be great, and we can contact. I'm sure that there is work that would fit in, with other work that is being done with other universities. But we have been very, and it's talking against our industry, we've been very lax in actually, contacting people. But if you can drop me some names, that's fine. We can go and chase them up.
I'll send you his details. He's actually one of our trustees. So
that'd be brilliant. Yeah.
And we're going up there actually in April for our next board meeting to show, so we can have a look what they're doing. But I think they've got a lot of money come in, something like 10 or 12 PhDs all on the go at the moment.
Wow.
Robotics,
well, that would be good.
robotics.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Okay, I'll give the details to John, and he can.
That would be lovely. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Appreciated.
There's a question from Martin Goodchild. Is satellite data being employed, remote sensing?
Not to any great extent, but it ought to be, put it that way, because it is so good. Yeah. But
would there be sufficient spatial resolution compared with drones?
It probably would be now, because it's getting better all the time. We tend to use that really for area identification and mapping, physical mapping areas, rather than actually looking at the actual vine itself when we're looking at new sites. But yes, I mean, that I'm sure that we can do more, or more can be done with satellites.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Silence from everyone. Well, then, thank you very much indeed, John, for your talk and for answering the questions. A topic of rising interest for many. So thank you very much indeed for your time.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me.